The Browning Auto-5 has its own special place in history as the first semi-auto shotgun, another of the great John Browning's designs for the ages. Browning called the A5 his greatest achievement, and while other experts may disagree, the A5 is certainly Browning's most star-crossed.
John Browning had already created milestones in repeating shotguns before he got to the Auto-5. He'd introduced the Winchester Model 1887, which was really the first effective and popular repeating shotgun that used standard shot shells rather than some contrived device. He'd introduced the Winchester Model 1893 and 1897 pump shotguns. He went on to design other pump shotguns that were produced by Stevens, became the basis for the very popular Ithaca 37. So he was well grounded in shotguns.
John Browning is undoubtedly one of the most prolific gun designers the world has ever known. It may be in all things considered, the best one.
Well, one thing I think that a lot of people don't know about John Browning was that he liked to hunt. He got to build, design the Winchester Model 93 and the Model 97 pump guns. There's pictures of him with those. But he liked to hunt and he liked to shoot birds, pigeons, trap. So I think it would be perfectly logical that he would ultimately design a semi-automatic shotgun.
John Browning grew up as a hunter. That was what he enjoyed, as well as inventing new firearms and new mechanisms for that. But he was a hunter, and he wanted to make things that would help him in that process.
There were particular problems that came up when you looked at a self-loading shotgun, and that was because of two factors. Now, one was the change from black powder to smokeless powder that really made self-loading firearms possible. But you combine that with the traditional construction of fine shotguns, which was to use Damascus steel for a barrel. But the problem with Damascus barrels is that there could be small flaws in the braided wire, basically, that formed the barrel, and there was a possibility that they'd come unwound like an Elmer Fudd shotgun when Bugs Bunny sticks his finger in the end. The other thing that was going on is that shot shells were in a very early form of development. It wasn't like the metallic cartridges being used in pistols and rifles and machine guns. They were using these paper and cardboard shot shells with brass bases, and they tended to come apart on extraction or any type of stress to the shot shell. Browning was trying to deal with this, and he came up with kind of a shock absorber system that allowed this semi-automatic shotgun that he was working on to fire a variety of load levels.
And in a departure from virtually everything else at the time, and really since, he developed what we know of as the A5 shotgun, which holds the record of the second most popular shotgun in sales, semi-automatic shotgun ever, next to the 1100 Remington.
My dad picked up an Auto-5 that belonged to an old-timer who uses his duck gun. 30-inch barrel, full choke, sling swivels on the thing. A little bit rusty, a little bit beat up, but boy, I'll tell you, that gun really shoots. You hit a clay target with that thing and it vaporizes. It's just absolutely gone.
John Browning put more time and effort into this semi-automatic shotgun than he had in any other firearms designs.
The A5 utilized a long recoil system. When a shell was fired, both the bolt and the barrel moved to the rear to recock the hammer. The barrel moves forward, followed by the bolt, which chambers another shell from the 5-round tube magazine. Browning was so sure of the design, he wanted royalties, but Winchester refused to meet his terms. He then took the automatic 5 design to Remington. But while Browning was waiting for an answer, the person he was negotiating with died of a heart attack. In frustration, Browning took his revolutionary design to FN in Belgium, who'd already produced a Browning-designed pistol. The new shotgun began production in Belgium in 1902.
It is called the A5 because it had a round capacity of 5 rounds, 4 in the tube and 1 in the chamber. And of course the A because it was the first automatic, or what we would call semi-automatic nowadays. It is a long recoil action. The entire barrel and bolt assembly recoil totally to the rear, a distance longer than the length of the shell. That's a big distance. It's almost like an artillery piece breech.
He sent the samples to Winchester. Winchester was working with them. They were requesting modifications. They were testing them. The thing that was grinding on Bennett with Winchester is that they'd always bought their designs outright from Browning. Browning wanted a royalty on this one. He wanted to get paid for every Browning self-loading shotgun that was sold. Bennett essentially said, it'll be a cold day in hell when we pay you a royalty on a gun. Well, Browning knew where to go with his design because Remington was out there. They had a great single-shot sporting rifle. The rolling block was incredibly popular, but they were not doing good in the repeating arms market. And here is Winchester's top designer, the greatest firearms genius in the world, calling up Hartley at Remington and saying, hey, would you guys like to produce my self-loading shotgun? Well, Hartley's answer is, heck yes, come over this afternoon. Well, he comes into Remington, sits down to wait for his meeting with Hartley. Someone comes out and announces, Mr. Hartley just died of a heart attack. Winchester's out, Remington's out. Browning, probably somewhat reluctantly, packs up his design, goes to Europe, meets with Fabrique Nationale, and the Browning Auto-5 shotgun becomes a product.
Belgian Brownings are considered some of the most finely made, mass-produced guns ever. They were made the old-fashioned way with forgings. They were hand-fitted. They have a lot of screws in their makeup. Again, that's not the common trend now. But the screws of the Browning guns are beautifully made themselves. They line up in the correct way when the gun's assembled correctly. The moving parts are polished to a fine finish, even inside the receiver of the gun.
Browning said that was his greatest achievement in firearms design. That's arguable when you look at the 1911 and the Browning machine guns and the subsequent guns that he designed.
Winchester lost their opportunity to produce the Browning Auto-5.
The Winchester attempt to circumvent the Browning patents resulted in one of the biggest early public relations blunders in firearms history. Since Winchester couldn't use the patented charging handle on the bolt, they used the barrel to charge their 1911 model. Its nickname became the Widowmaker. Browning later successfully licensed his design to Remington, and their Model 11 became the first semi-auto shotgun produced in the United States. A version was licensed to Savage and was produced for years as the Savage 720. First and foremost, the A5 was a hunting shotgun, supremely reliable and able to take a staggering amount of abuse.
The A5 is many things, but it's not a combat shotgun. It is a gun for hunting, it's a gun for competition, but it did see some service. During World War II, it was necessary to train huge quantities of aerial gunners, my grandfather being one of them. He was a tail gunner, B-24 Liberators. And one of his fondest memories of his youth was riding around a field in Texas, belted into the back of a truck with an A5, shooting clay targets. And it apparently prepared him well. He did 27 missions. He's pretty sure he shot 9 Germans out of the sky. So, yeah, I'm a little grateful for the A5.
And so you see a lot of these guns.
The A5's reputation for ferocious recoil was largely undeserved. The shotgun had a series of friction rings that controlled the rate of recoil and adjusted the gun to different loads. Often those rings disappeared or too much oil rendered them useless. The result was a shotgun that was indeed a shoulder bruiser.
Basically, when the gun fires, the barrel kicks back, hits the bolt, operates the gun. Now, the downside is they kick. But, you know, when I was growing up, and real men in America either used a Winchester Model 12 pump gun or a Browning Auto-5. Those were what real men had. Of course, that was the era when real men had tattoos and women had pierced earrings.
Browning had favored lines, and he loved that. I guess he was, because of the mechanics of the gun, he could not round off that generation worth of semi-automatic. So you see that line, you see it first in the Auto-5, but you see it again in the BAR. And it's a kind of an upward sweep to a right angle, and then the top of the receiver is squared off. And in the Auto-5, there's no sight. In the BAR, there's an adjustable sight. But it's the same line, and the sort of feel and configuration through the center of the gun. You feel that they are siblings. You understand that they are siblings of their father, the great genius, John Browning. And to me, that's very interesting.
One of the nicknames of the Browning A5 is humpback. The reason it's square back here is because that breech bolt comes back a little bit farther. So if you build the whole mechanism forward another half of an inch or so, then you could slope it back here a little bit. But then again, the mechanism has to be just a little bit longer so that the bolt can operate just a little bit farther out.
The original A5s, like this one, were made in Belgium until the start of World War II, when Remington produced the A5 alongside their Model 11s. Production returned to Belgium after the war, but moved to Browning's Miroku plant in Japan in 1975. The last original A5s rolled off the production line in 1998. In 2012, Browning reintroduced the Auto-5, but not really. While the new gun faithfully keeps the humpback lines of the original, the action has been drastically modified. No parts are interchangeable. The new Auto-5 is still recoil-operated, but it's a short-action inertia-type system, rather than the long recoil system of the original. The barrel stays put.
Yeah, the great thing about patents is that they expire. The new A5 shotgun is not a recoil-operated gun like John Moses had in mind, but it uses bits and pieces. In particular, it uses the rotating bolt and inertia system of the Benelli. And, you know, Benelli's patent's expired. It's a great operating system. It just happens to be a little different than what John Moses had in mind.
When I take it to the range, or I take it to a sporting clays tournament or something, it's funny how as soon as you take it out of the case, people look at the thing and it's like, wow, I haven't seen one of those in a while. And that's a great gun. Boy, my uncle had that, or my dad had one of those, or grandpa had one of them. They're really great guns. And somehow it has the cachet of the guy who knows what he's doing as one of these things. Now, in my case, that's totally untrue. But I love that gun. I take it out there, and as I say, it really powders the birds. It's a great gun. Has never malfunctioned on me. And as they say, despite it obviously hasn't had the best of care, it works, and it works all the time.
When John Browning first showed the design of the Auto-5 to the president of Winchester, the president reportedly said, "That is the ugliest gun I've ever seen." Apparently, beauty really is in the eye of the beholder. I'm Joe Mantegna, and this is Gun Story.